So tonight we'll continue our discussion of chapter 5 of the 10th canto. Nanda Maharaj meets Vasudev in Mathura. And remember, Kamsa is still alive. This is all happening during the terror campaign of Kamsa, who ordered his assistants to kill any child born within 10 days of the time that he thinks Krishna must have appeared somewhere in the vicinity. So kill all the babies in that whole area within 10 days' time, a period of 10 days. But before we get there, we're still celebrating the Jata Karma festival. This is the festival, as you may remember from yesterday, the day after Janmashtami. And we've been focusing on how extraordinarily opulent was the village of Nanda Maharaj. And they're just agriculturalists. So we were hearing about 20 million cows, 7 mountainous hills of grains covered with cloth, embroidered with gold. And we heard about the contribution of all the artists. Art is an extraordinarily important part of bhakti. The brahmanas were there reciting mantras to purify the whole situation. Of course, the Supreme Pure has appeared there. But no one is thinking Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as we discussed yesterday. That's the nature of Vrindavan. Pure love of Krishna with no mixture of Aishvarya, opulence, awe, and reverence. So you had the whole gamut of Vedic artists, musicians. Remember, the musicians couldn't stop playing their instruments because they were just overwhelmed with ecstasy. They just went on and on and on playing their instruments, especially their drums. And you had the glorifiers of different types, the suttas reciting the Puranic histories, the Magadhas reciting histories of the royal dynasties, the Vandis reciting prayers and glorifications in general. And then you heard about the decoration of Brajapur, the town of Nanda Maharaj. Such natural opulence. Gateways made of flowers and leaves, and houses cleaned by what? Water flavored with flowers and sandalwood. No artificial ingredients, no plastic containers. And we understand that everyone in Brajapur, Vrindavan, simply exists for Krishna's pleasure. The gopis, the gopas, the cowherd girls, the cowherd men, everyone simply exists for Krishna's pleasure and does everything 100% for Krishna's pleasure. So even Nanda Maharaj, he's offering propitiations, offerings to the devatas, to the demigods. He's giving charity to the brahmanas. He's worshiping the ancestors. All the things, as we discussed yesterday, that Bhagavad Gita says don't do. But he's doing it to secure blessings for his son, Krishna. Whatever he does is only 100% for Krishna's pleasure. So now we're hearing about, again, cow kata. Gavo Vrishava Sattara Haridra Taila Rushita Vichitra Datu Barhasrag Vastra Kanchana Malinaha. The cows, the bulls and calves were thoroughly smeared with a mixture of turmeric and oil, mixed with varieties of minerals. Their heads were bedecked with peacock feathers, and they were garlanded and covered with cloth and golden ornaments. So we spoke before about how the cows that Nanda Maharaj gave in charity to the Brahmanas had silver-plated hooves and golden-plated horns. And now you're hearing about the decoration of the cows that remain with Nanda Maharaj's herd. If he gave 20 million away, how much does he still have? So these cows are decorated artistically with mixtures of turmeric and oil and forest minerals. They're wearing peacock feathers on their heads. They're garlanded and covered with cloth and golden ornaments. So where's all this wealth coming from? The cowherd men mainly are dealing in milk and milk products, ghee, yogurt. Where's all the money come from? But you see, you're dealing with a different type of civilization that considers milk products to be like gold. And so the cowherd men with Nanda Maharaj would trade milk products and get all kinds of costly garments, gold coins. So just for milk products? We have cow killer consciousness, we must admit. Although we say, yes, Govinda, the one who gives pleasure to the senses and the cows, Gopal, Krishna, the protector of the cows. But we accept cows because Krishna likes cows. But practically speaking, we don't have, and we have no idea how society can prosper just by taking care of cows. That's because we're impersonalists. We don't understand that by doing things in a way to please Krishna, material nature reciprocates. Just like in the first canto of Bhagavatam, it is stated, Kamam Vavarsha Parjanya Sarva Kama Dugamahi. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira, the cows were so happy that they were flooding the ground with milk, making the ground muddy. They were pouring out milk with such huge quantities. It was running all over the ground. Why are the cows so happy? And what does it matter that the cows are happy? We think like that because we're impersonalists. We think, all right, Krishna has his pet cows. Everyone has pets. Some have pet cats, some pet dogs. Krishna has pet cows. Because we're devotees of Krishna, therefore we take care of cows. I was flying on the airplane from Atlanta to here, and I noticed now you can bring dogs on the plane. Did you know that? You didn't know that? No, I couldn't. I guess you have to pay for an extra seat for the dog. Well, I saw this lady coming down the aisle with a dog. It wasn't a guide dog because she was blind. No, it was a pet dog. One of those toy dogs, you know. So what happens when the dog, wants to do its due, you know? It's on the plate. I don't know how they do it. Does anyone know? Such care lavished on dogs. Yet, how many cows are slaughtered every year in the USA? Who knows? Huh? 33 million a year, plus 300,000 calves. So the 33 million doesn't include the calves. Three, add on 300,000 or so calves per year. 33 million. And how many slaughterhouse facilities do you think are in the USA? Because they had to be monitored by the federal government, so therefore you can find out. Anyone know how many slaughterhouses in the USA? 1,000. So we think, what's Nanda Maharaj doing? Where does he get his money from? That would be the question we ask today. Where's your where's your industry? Where's your finance? Your financial services? Where are your nuclear weapons to guard all your wealth? So Prabhupada writes in the purport, Nanda Maharaj belonged to the Vaishya community, the agriculturalist community. How to protect the cows and how rich this community was are explained in these verses. We can hardly imagine that cows, bulls, and calves could be cared for so nicely and decorated so well with cloths and valuable golden ornaments. How happy they were. All this from agriculture, from taking care of cows. And what about the cowherd men themselves? The next verse describes how they were dressed so opulently, not with polyester and nylon and acrylic or no, they're dressed with exotic, costly, natural garments. O King Pritchett, the cowherd men dress very opulently with valuable ornaments and garments such as coats and turbans. So they're all approaching the house of Nanda Maharaj with presents. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, when we consider the past condition of the agriculturalist in the village, we can see how opulent he was simply because of agricultural produce and protection of cows. And then he talks about today. By the atrocious activities of Ugra Karma. Who knows what Ugra Karma means? Horrible activities producing horrible karma. By the atrocious activities of Ugra Karma, how we are killing the opportunity of human civilization. So amidst describing the glories of Krishna's appearance in Nanda Maharaj's village, Prabhupada is giving you insight into the current state of humanity. Because we can't take it seriously that just by doing agriculture and taking care of cows, a society can prosper. Who knows, at the turn of the 20th century, the year 1900, that means 124 years ago, what was the percentage of Americans who were directly engaged in agricultural activities? Who knows? Huh? 40, 38%, 40. Who knows what it is now? 1.2%. Because machines and chemicals have taken over. Small farms are wiped out. One Secretary of Agriculture for a previous administration gave his message to farmers. He said, look, get big or get out. Let the multinationals, the corporate industry, let it take over all the agriculture. Finish off the small farms. Get big or get out. So what are the complaints about organic farming. They say it is labor intensive. The whole point of capitalism is how to push down your labor costs. So if you can use machines, if you can use chemicals, you don't need agriculturalists. You don't need people working on the farms. You saturate the earth with chemicals for fertilizer. You saturate the earth with chemicals for killing weeds. You have huge machines. So why do you need labor? So that's the complaint often about organic agriculture. You have to have people out in the fields. You got to pay them. So better to have the people unemployed or miserably employed than working on the farms. Farm work is considered very low. I remember even back in 1973, as a Sankirtan devotee, I would go to state fairs. We would set up, they had booths at state fairs, and we would set up a booth, incense and books and kurtas. Those are the big sellers, Indian kurtas. Were considered very exotic back then. People would flock towards us and buy them. So incense, spiritual sky incense, books, Indian kurtas, and these state fairs would always have a big portion dedicated to what is it called? YFA, Young Farmers of America. And you see all these young teenagers. Another one was FFA, Future Farmers of America. These were clubs that are all over the country for encouraging young kids to be farmers. Another one was called the 4-H Club. Do you remember that? Yeah, it was quite common in a town like Port Royal, Mifflin Town, whatever you call it. Did you have those, Dina Polika, in your town? Right. Probably long gone before your time. But that's the way it was, even as recent as 1973. Farming was still considered, as Prabhupada says, a noble occupation. In fact, in First Canto, Prabhupada writes that agriculture is the noblest profession. But now it's looked down on. Oh, what kind of country yokel are you working on farms? So in this way, people get lousy food from chemical agriculture. Their health is destroyed. The land is destroyed. There's a dangerous amount, far excessive amount of nitrogen released because of all the fertilizer. But it's very convenient. You don't have to pay laborers. You just owe the bank hundreds of thousands of dollars for your huge machinery. So therefore, when we hear about Nanda Maharaj's opulence, we're wondering. Yes, it's Braj is no ordinary place. It's the embassy of the spiritual world, but still, Prabhupada is giving us the mercy of a clear correlation that yes, this is a spiritual town, no ordinary town. At the same time, there are ramifications that we can take from it for our contemporary situation. So we talked about the cowherd men rushing to the home of Nanda Maharaj. The child has just been born. Nanda Maharaj has a son. Why was that so noteworthy? Who remembers? Very old. So the whole village is rejoicing. They're happy for Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai and everyone. is attracted to Krishna. So next come the gopi wives of the cowherd men. Before they come, what do? Huh? Of course, they decorate themselves before they leave the house. Dresses, ornaments. What do you call the ointment for the eyes? Anyone have that on? Kajal. Sometimes it's anjana, isn't it? I thought kajal also, but sometimes the word anjana is used. Maybe it's something different. Anyone? I'm looking. Anything around the eye? Devaki Preeti? Nothing. Nanyabaki? Any? No. Krishna Mai. Okay, I knew I'd find one. Is it called Kajal, Anjana, or both? Huh? Ah, okay. So they're dressing in celebration of Krishna. No one in Vrindavan has selfish desires. I'm going to dress to look good so others will think I'm so beautiful. No, they're decorating themselves in joy, celebrating the appearance of Krishna. Jiva Goswami explains that they decorated themselves with cloth and cosmetics because of their natural prem, their pure love of Krishna, their pure love for Yashoda. That's why they're decorating themselves. And then Shukadeva Goswami describes their lotus-like faces, decorated with saffron and newly grown kumkum. Anyone put that on? Saffron, newly grown kumkum? Krishnamai? No? They're hurrying to the house of Mother Yashoda with gifts in their hands. And as they're rushing to the house, Shukadeva Goswami describes that their body has very fully developed features which moved as they hurried along to the house of Nanda and Yashoda. And again, Prabhupada talks about how women in the modern civilization, they don't live naturally. Therefore, their health is affected, their physique is affected. This description of the village women gives a clear example of the contrast between natural life and the artificial life of a condemned society. Ooh, do we live in a condemned society? No, can't be that bad. Condemned society, such as that of the Western countries, where topless, bottomless beauty may be easily purchased in clubs and shops and for public advertisements. Can't be that bad. So the village women are so happy Mother Yashoda has given birth to Krishna. This is a big thing, the beauty of the gopis. And these are the elder gopis that Shukadeva Goswami is referring to. Their earrings are described, polished jeweled earrings. From their necks hung metal lockets, hands decorated with bangles, dresses of varied colors. And as they rushed along the street toward the house of Nanda Maharaj, flowers were falling from their hair and from the garlands they wore. So it looked like there was a shower of flowers going on as they rushed toward the house of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. Can you just see that? Their beautiful features swaying as they rushed along, flowers falling from their hair and the garlands. What a beautiful sight. And of course, we should keep in mind that the gopis are expansions of Krishna's pleasure potency. And Lord Chaitanya says, there's no one more dear or no better way of loving Krishna than that demonstrated by the cowherd girls of Vrindavan and the cowherd ladies. Vrajavadu includes not only the young, but also the older ones. So we're seeing the house of Nanda Maharaj, and the cowherd ladies are just arriving. And they're curiously, they're offering praise to the little child, saying, may you become the king of Braj and protect all the inhabitants. They're saying that to a newborn infant. But this is done out of affection. They're so attracted to Krishna. Please become the king of Braj and protect us. May you live long. This is what prem does. It produces such ecstatic situations. So now we hear about, once again, music. Varied types of musical presentations. Festivals are so important in spiritual life. Festivals require musicians, artists, cooks, brahmanas. I think I've mentioned it here before, but when I was in Atlanta the past weekend, I reminded devotees of this letter, a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote, had his secretaries write to all the temples in, this is 1976. He said, I've noted the decline in the quality of the Sunday feast. The Sunday feast was a program started by Srila Prabhupada on 26 Second Avenue. They called it the Love Feast then. You know, it was hippy jippy times. So, so they were, and I remember when I took to devotional service in 1972, the Sunday feasts were just blowout affairs. You remember also? So in this letter, this directive, Srila Prabhupada said every Sunday feast should have 13 preparations. And he listed them all. At least two types of sabjis, two types of chutneys, puris, melpuras, sweet rice, kheer, samosas. That's how you celebrate a festival. Prasad, that I call it devastating prasad. You just feel totally. I was talking about this in the UK, and some of the older devotees there remembered. They said, we just lived from one Sunday feast to the next. That's how outrageous the prasad was. Sunday feast would be over. You're totally devastated. Okay, 7 more days till the next one. And if you're going to drop your bhakti and leave Krishna consciousness, you never did it before the Sunday feast. Monday morning was the time to take off. And before you would leave, you would leave in the middle of the night, like early Monday morning before everyone woke up. You pack your bag, but before you left, you knew, because you still believed in the power of prasad, you would raid the Maha cabinet for all the milk sweets. So the devotees would wake up in the morning, and You expect at breakfast you'll be served the milk sweets. Where are they? Where are all the milk sweets from yesterday? What? So and so, we called it blooping. So and so blooped. So and so left and took all the milk sweets. Oh no! What a disaster! So the TP would make a special Mahaprasad safe. And still, devotees would, before they disappeared, they would try to break into it would be a wooden box with a lock on it. And there would have to be a hole in the box so to let air in, so the Maha would stay fresh. But still, devotees would smash the lock, and they would try to stick their hand through the hole in the box to to grab what was there. So the TP would put nails around the hole. This is serious business. This is how seriously we took prasad. Thinking how, first we have Jayadvaita Maharaj coming in a few days. He was one of the senior Vaishnavas. If you were a devotee for 5 years, you were a senior Vaishnava. So he was one of the senior Vaishnavas. And at that time in the New York temple, every morning for breakfast would be halava and sweet rice for, for breakfast every morning. and and you'd have that would be served on a, do you know what wax paper is? Everyone would have a piece of, you sit on the floor, and on the floor in front of you would be a piece of wax paper, and the servers would come by and put the halava and the sweet rice on the wax paper. So the younger devotees knew what to do. Sit next to an older devotee, like Jayadvaita, Brahmachari then, because for some reason these older devotees wouldn't eat their allotment of halava. The server would come by and put the halava on their wax paper plate, and then the senior devotee would carefully tear the wax paper plate with a set with half of his halava on it and put it to the side. So you would, as a young devotee, you would sit next to him and imply that you wanted sadhu sticker. And the senior devotee is thinking, oh, these younger devotees, they're very humble. They're very submissive. But no, we just wanted to help them. So you would sit next to such a devotee and patiently wait. You'd ask a philosophical question. All for, all for the whole of us. And then you'd be watching out of the corner of your eye after you ask a philosophical question. In class today, it was mentioned, talk about tattva. Can you expand on that? Then you're watching, waiting for that magic moment when he tears off a piece of wax paper with half of his halava on and puts it to the side. And then you, can I have that? And the senior Vaishnava, oh, yeah, sure, sure, sure. So this is what we did to get prasad. We were prasad addicts because the prasad was such a total experience. I think I told you about one of my services as a Sankirtan devotee. Does anyone remember? We would do Sankirtan 7 days a week back then, Sundays included. So we could come back in the evening for the Sunday feast. But I was given this service to leave the Sankirtan spot, like Port Authority Bus Terminal in New York City, leave it early and get to the temple, get back to the temple just when the Sunday feast offering was coming off the altar. Because we knew, the Sankirtan devotees knew, that the cooks would have a meeting in the Sankirtan office analyzing all the preparations. They would lock the door of the Sankirtan office. This is the Brooklyn Temple, the famous Henry Street Temple. They'd lock the door, and the head cook would review with them all the preparations. So the Sankirtan devotees knew that. So my service was to go back to the temple early and put my ear to the locked door and take notes when overhearing the cook's analysis. Chutney, not so good. Halava, extraordinarily wonderful. Sweet rice, sensational. And I would write it all down. And then when the Sankirtan devotees would get back, they would have a game plan, they would have a strategy in mind that, okay, we go for this preparation, we don't take so much of that preparation. So the servers would be totally bewildered. They'd come by with a big bucket of chutney because the Sankirtan devotees are sitting all in a row on the floor, and everyone would just just show complete renunciation. It's all right, Prabhu. No, not today. And then another bucket would come by with the preparation, which I had tipped the devotees off. This is a sensation. And the server would come by and put a little bit on the plate, and the devotee would, more, more. So the servers couldn't figure out what was going on. But this is how serious we took prasad. We had to have strategy. It's like a football game. So that's how wonderful the prasad was. And this is following in the festival tradition of Nanda Maharaj. So we're up to the part about the music. Varieties of music, varieties of musical instruments, and because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the music from the festival was circulating, pervading the whole universe. Krishna comes once every day of Brahma. This is an extraordinary, inconceivably extraordinary situation. So why can't the sounds of the music celebrating his appearance spread throughout the upper, middle, and lower planetary system? Krishna is unlimited, so why can't unlimited instruments play? What were the types of instruments? Venas, that's a stringed instrument, flutes, kartels, and drums. And the musicians would play different varieties. Just like when there's a feast, you have different varieties of prasad, so different varieties of music. Now here's an extraordinary part. In celebration, the cowherd men and women take butter, ghee, yogurt, and milk and start throwing it joyfully on each other. They even take butter and smear it on each other's bodies. This is how opulent they are in milk products. Will we ever do that here at Gita Nagari? Going wild after a festival, smearing butter on one another, soaking each other with yogurt and milk. But this is how rich they were with milk products. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, from this statement, we can understand that 5,000 years ago, not only was there enough milk, butter, and curd to eat, drink, and cook with, but when there was a festival, it would be thrown about without restriction. There was no limit to how extensively milk, butter, curd, and other such products were used in human society. So by hearing this, our conceptions of wealth totally change. And you can see that people today have forgotten what is good eating. Even if they're vegetarian, they still don't know what good eating is. They don't have time to cook, no time to eat. If you change how society produces its food and how it cooks and eats, you change the whole society. I notice when I go to Italy, they still have the tradition there of slow food. You sit down for lunch and you can spend 2 hours eating because they're talking while they're eating and talking while they're eating and more and talking. That's all the luxury you need. Good food, good table conversation. That's luxury. It's like Prabhupada explained that the happiness of Indian family life, he said, is eating. But young people today don't know how to cook, they don't know how to eat. To get fresh food, they got to go to hole in your pocket market, whole salary. So what young person can handle that? They just go to some fast food place. So this chapter reminds you what real luxury is. If you can eat nicely and be healthy, eat sumptuously, you don't need anything else. That's your sense gratification. Fresh food, wonderfully prepared. And the ideal is ghee. Everything we ate in the early days of ISKCON in the 70s was saturated with ghee. We never thought of anything else. Ghee, ghee, ghee. We all knew the famous statement by Charvaka Muni, the atheist. Whatever you do, get ghee. Bag it, borrow it, steal it, get ghee. I've been to temples where some devotees have never tasted ghee before. They never tasted food cooked in ghee. Of course, the goal is to have ahimsa ghee. Some or other, we have to make an arrangement to get sufficient quantity of ahimsa ghee. That's what keeps a young devotee engaged in bhakti. That's why devotees said they lived from one Sunday feast to the next Sunday feast. I remember going out, when we go out on Sankirtan, we take our lunch with us from the temple. The lunch was usually some potato subji, deep fried in ghee, along with breadsticks, white flour breadsticks, that thick, deep fried in ghee. So you know what happened when we took our lunch break on Sankirtan, just go to sleep for about a half hour. Oh, wake up, got to get out there again. So this is opulence. This is luxury. So by hearing about Nanda Maharaj and his Nandotsava, his festival, Jatakarma, celebrating Krishna's birthday. We understand what is real opulence, what is real sense gratification. Of course, in Vrindavan, everyone is simply 100% thinking about Krishna's pleasure. So I just love the sight of the cowherd men and women throwing milk and butter and ghee and yogurt on each other, and even smearing each other's bodies with butter. Overjoyed. They're doing that because they're overjoyed. They've seen the little child Krishna. So they're now in the streets doing this, celebrating. Nanda Maharaj distributes charity to all the artists because that's how the artists maintain themselves. There was no question of what you call today starving artists. They were all maintained by gifts from given at the celebrations. So Nanda Maharaj would give them according to their stature. He would freely distribute wealth to them, clothing, ornaments, and cows. Nowadays, someone gives you a cow, you think, oh no, how am I going to take care of the cow? We live in a totally different world, but at least we should know what the real standard of human civilization is. So the whole celebration is for pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But what does Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men, what do they think? We're pleasing Vishnu, praying to Vishnu for the blessings upon this child Krishna. Krishna is the origin of Vishnu. But the Brijbasis, by the arrangement of Yoga Maya, don't know the tattva. They don't know the science of Krishna. All they know is we're unlimitedly attracted to Krishna. So we're doing everything. We're praying to the demigods. We're praying to Vishnu. We're praying to the ancestors, all for Krishna's benefit. So now we get some insight into Rohini. She's a wife of Vasudev. Why is she in Vrindavan? Who knows? Uh, yes, Vasudev, being a Kshatriya, had several wives. He sent Rohini to Vrindavan for safety. And she gave birth to Balaram. Actually, mystically, Balaram was transferred from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini. So she's known as the mother of Balaram. Balaram was born, how many? 14, 10 days before Krishna? Who knows? Where's Venu? Oh, Venu Badurya had to go. 10, 10 or 14 days before Krishna. So why isn't Rohini at home taking care of her newborn infant? She's celebrating because Balaram, meanwhile, while she's celebrating, little Balaram, 2 weeks old, is sleeping at home.
So 1 week before they celebrate
Huh?
When we celebrate and Janmashtami, will be 1 week.
1 week. All right. So Balaram's a little infant sleeping at home, so she goes out and dresses up, which is unusual for that culture because generally a woman doesn't dress nicely when her husband's away, when she's away from the husband. And Vasudeva is in Mathura, imprisoned by Kamsa, and she's in Vrindavan. But the celebration is irresistible. So she dresses gorgeously, decorates herself with a necklace, a garland, and other ornaments, and she's wandering here and there, receiving the women guests at the festival. So that gives you insight into how meticulous real human culture is. And Nanda Maharaj, in talking to her, credits her that he had a son. He said, because you have come to Vrindavan, I've had this son, Krishna, because of your presence. It shows you how a real Vaishnava is always giving credit to others. Say, well, what does it, just because Rohini is there, how does that make it so that Nanda Maharaj can have a son? But when you're in real joy, real happiness, you're giving credit to others. It's because of you. It's like if I said, "Oh, it's because of Kala Swarup that the rain is falling and the plants are all happy now." Well, but this is rasa, this is bhava. When you make a statement like that, you just see good in everyone, and you attribute all good to everyone because of you. The rain is falling while the sun is shining, very auspicious. It's because Jasenia is here. So this is just the ways of ecstatic love. Rohini is more fortunate than Vasudev's other wives, even more fortunate than Devaki. Why? Ah,
Because you gotta watch Krishna's childhood costume.
yes, she was there in Braj to witness Krishna's childhood pastimes, whereas Devaki and Vasudev's other wives weren't there. So, other than Mother Yashoda, Rohini is the closest to Krishna. So she's considered Mahabhaga, the most fortunate. Her very name means she who produces great bliss. What does Yashoda mean? One who gives fame. Yes. Now, Rohini was also feeling separation from Vasudev, her husband, who's in Mathura in prison, and she's been sent, as we said, to Braj for safekeeping. But this festival is taking precedence over any kind of other attitude or mentality. So she's dressed up, which, as we pointed out, is an exceptional case. And she's receiving the women guests at the festival. We get a hint now that the home of Nanda Maharaj, eternally the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always endowed with the natural opulences of wealth. Still, as soon as Krishna appeared there, manifest his presence there, Nanda Maharaj's home became the place for the pastimes of the goddess of fortune. This is referring confidentially to whom? Yes, to Srimati Radharani. She's the chief of the goddesses of fortune. Actually, the queens of Dwarka expand from Srimati Radharani, and the Lakshmis in Vaikuntha expand from Srimati Radharani. Just like Krishna can expand, so can devotees. That's another subject we may talk about tomorrow, how all the eternal associates of Krishna can demonstrate expansions They expand into personalities into Vaikuntha, and they expand into personalities who are demigods. So that may be quite fascinating for you to know that devotees can also, the perfected devotees in Goloka Vrindavan can expand themselves into counterparts, or better put, reflections in Vaikuntha, and then shadows in the heavenly planets. And when they come, when the original eternal associates in Goloka Vrindavan come to be part of Krishna's Leela, these Vaikuntha expansions and demigod expansions merge within them. Just like when Krishna comes, all the avatars and expansions merge within him. You'll find all this in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. How many of you have read Brihad Bhagavatamrita? So all this information is there. So Krishna's appearance in the land of Braj, we hear in the purport, indicates that the chief goddess of fortune, Radharani, would also appear there very soon. So tomorrow we'll talk about Nanda Maharaj leaving Vrindavan to go to Mathura to pay taxes to Kamsa. Why did he do it? What was his mentality? We'll discuss that in our next session. So for now, any questions? Speak louder, please.
Thank you for the points. I was just wondering, on this point of the age of Maharaj, how it's very astonishing that, Krishna, as his son, we are reading currently in the sixth canto about Arjuna, and he was also quite old, and he had a son that Srila Prabhupada says is as a quite a negative thing, how old Arjuna was, that he was still having children. So I was wondering, how to see it, how Nanda Maharaj doesn't have that same principle of
Because he's Nanda Maharaj. He's the eternal associate of Krishna. Big difference between Nanda Maharaj and Ajamil. You can't even put the two together in the same breath, practically. Nanda Maharaj is no ordinary material personality. He's an eternal Golokavasi, associate of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna doesn't need any parents, but for pastime's sake, because some devotees want to love him in that way. He says, all right, you can take the role of my mother, my father. He doesn't need any parents. He's not born by seminal injection from the womb of a mother. That's why he appeared outside of Devaki. First, he appeared in the mind of Vasudeva, and then transferred to the mind of Devaki. And then his birth meant he was outside. He's been there all the time, but he manifests. So we talked about that yesterday. How Krishna is unborn, yet he seems to take birth. We're unborn, but because we identify with bodies of matter, we go through our body goes through an actual birth experience. Krishna doesn't go through all that. He's already in every atom. He appears at will. But because some devotees want to love him in Vatsalya Ras, parental love, all right, take the role of my mother, take the role of my father. Anything else? Yes.
When you say we're unborn, I kind of scratching my head about it. So
Krishna says in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, Ajo nicho sahasratam yam purana nahanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul, there's no birth, no death.
when you say he's the father of all living entities,
Mhm.
but we're also unborn, I find it confusing.
Your source is Krishna. You're Krishna's energy. In that sense, Krishna is your father. He's the seed-giving father. Even materially, for the material forms and species of life, it's all coming from Krishna. So he says, I'm the seed-giving father. Everything has to have a source. So Krishna is letting you know in Bhagavad Gita, he's the source. So if you want to properly honor your predecessors, your ancestors, you have to honor Krishna. He's the ultimate ancestor of your family. Not always these days, but sometimes it happens. Still happens that children honor their father. So why not honor the Supreme Father? But of course, Krishna is much more than that. He's a supreme enjoyer. That's why bhakti knowledge is the last word in understanding the science of the Supreme. You find out, yes, you can love the Lord as your father, as your friend, as your master, as your lover. Sometimes you hear hints in other spiritual traditions of love of God. But what is it? Because people don't know, for the most part, what is love of God. They end up loving their country, loving their hometown football team, loving money, loving social media. You probably remember when being in the IT world when social media first started, it was hailed as something that would bring everyone together, increase democracy because everyone could express their opinions. And what has happened? Everyone knows it's driven people further apart than ever before, made people more lonely than ever before, and they have no clear remembrance of what it's like to have a real friend, other than what thumbs up, thumbs down. So this is what Prahlad Maharaj means when he says the so-called solution is worse than the problem it was meant to solve. Yes, Yashodeva.
At the wrestling arena, we hear about how some of the audience members, they're glorifying Vrindavan and the devotees there. Focus the path in Acharam. They say, what austerities could the cowherd women in Vrindavan have performed? We were to see Krishna to live in these places in Vrindavan. But they're not there as a result of their austerities, all players. The Tasya,
But
is that the Bhava?
that's the currency of the of a real human civilization, austerity. So it's like, what kind of austerities? Well, how did you? It's like our saying today, how did you make all that money? It's the austerities is considered the wealth. So you attribute everything to that. What do they do? Just like Shukadeva Goswami says about the cowherd boys. Krita Punya Punja. How many austerities did these cowherd boys do for how many lifetimes to get a chance to play with Krishna? So it's a way of saying, wow, how great is that? What inconceivable things did they do? So you say, how many austerities did they perform? It's natural to talk like that. They're not speaking tattva, they're speaking rasa. These are the ladies in the wrestling arena. They're feeling bad because these two young boys are wrestling with these huge mountain-like wrestlers. And we're here watching this. But look at the beauty of those boys. Oh, how fortunate are the residents of Vrindavan to always see these boys. There's Dasya Prem in the back.
We're talking about these different ceremonies, functions, like the bands film and all these. Yeah, just talking about the kind of the Italian culture, how they sit down in meals for long hours a day. So I'm wondering, are these like ceremonious aspects in, included in our current Islam culture, or will they expand more as Islam and maybe Ganesh Dharma what they go to?
Well, it depends on you all, how you celebrate your festivals. We need devastating cooks. I was explaining in the UK how back in the day, back in the 70s, if you were the temple cook, you were up there in the pantheon with the temple president and the Sankirtan leader. Because everyone in the temple knew their consciousness depended on the temple cook. So the temple cook would be in the kitchen all day, listening to lectures. He knew the philosophy, real Brahmana. Generally, they knew how to play mridanga because they would dash from the kitchen to the temple room for noon arti or 4 o'clock arti, play mridanga. So they knew how to play mridanga. They knew philosophy. They were really powerful brahmanas. And everyone in the temple respected them. So it wasn't like, oh, the cook, or I got to go. I'm part of the cooking roster. Who put me on the cooking roster? No, it was an honor to be in the kitchen. So that much of the celebration culture you could revive. Kirtan, dancing, prasad, some talks about Krishna. You've got the fresh food here. Are you supplying the fresh veggies? Okay. You got to start somewhere. You have the luxury here of fresh food and fresh milk. Krishna's given you that sense gratification. Once you taste vegetables freshly harvested, it's hard to go back to anything else. You realize you've been just all your life you've been chewing cardboard. How many have noticed that? You haven't noticed that. This is luxury. Then you start to understand what is a real human society. Eating plays such a big role. How you grow the food, how you harvest the food, how you cook it, how you eat it. That's the big thing in life. All right, no other questions? Yes.
Um, my question is in terms of the experience here. So in the last book where you read that Chief Eyes of Fortune, Shumatsu Radharani.
Yes.
And then right before that, Prabhupada says, wherever Krishna goes, God of fortune naturally resides in him. So my question is, so in other incarnations, like for example, yesterday we talked about Lord Lord comes along, correct?
He has his consort,
Oh,
just like Narayan has his consort in Vaikuntha.
okay.
I forgot her name. Maybe it's Varahi, something like that.
Okay, so all the incarnations that come down, they're basically all coming with this, I would say, like entourage. Uh,
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is never alone. You don't always get information about all the entourage of these various avatars. But to be with others is the real pleasure. Just like Super Soul, Paramatma, it's not alone. And entourage is opulence. Just like you see these famous musicians always have an entourage. Back in the 60s, 70s, they called them groupies. They still use that term? No, she hasn't heard it. You're not famous enough yet. You don't have any groupies yet. That's part of opulence, to have an entourage. No one likes to be alone. Even though Krishna is self-sufficient, still for his pleasure, he manifests associates. And still he's self-sufficient. Depends on no one for his pleasure. Shrimati Radharani is his pleasure potency. Yes.
Earlier you spoke about the drastic numbers of cow slaughter in the US.
33 million.
And also the beauty of what we have here in our day-to-day activities like Gita Nagari. Do you foresee in our Krishna consciousness movement, in our ISKCON centers, there being a gravitation toward really supporting this ahimsa practice of nonviolence to cows, I guess throughout the entire ISKCON movement? Is it up to us to continue to reach out and say, hey, we can supply from farm to every city, or
Can you?
maybe not yet?
Okay, well, that's the goal. But can you? That's why when Paramananda Prabhu, who was the one who pioneered Gita Nagari back in 1975, he asked Srila Prabhupada, well, because Prabhupada was saying more cows, more milk, more cows. So he said, more cows means more land. Prabhupada said, yes, just get more land. That astonished Paramananda Prabhu. Like, there are limitations. Cows require land, so that automatically limits the number of cows. Prabhupada just said, oh, get more land. So what you're doing is pioneering, and gradually there's notice of what you're doing. Gradually. Meanwhile, as I was discussing with Jasenia, the world is going its crazy way more and more every moment. Politically, everything's fragmenting. Economically, things are tightening up. Environmentally, wild weather. It's like we got a tornado warning for just for this up until 9 o'clock or something. So people will be pushed to question, is there another way to live? They're so caught up in the entertainment industry. Everyone wants to sit behind a screen. No one wants to stick their fingers in the ground, into the soil. Don't think this will just go on automatically. You talk about Generation Z. I was giving in Mayapur, I was giving the statistics about Generation Z, how in the world, in the greatest or the biggest survey done of Generation Z to date, a survey done by Stanford University and a university in the UK, and it was done in the USA, Canada, Germany, UK, India, also 10 countries. They found that 75% of Generation Z are pessimistic about the future of humanity. 75%. 52% think humanity is doomed. And 33% say they don't want to have children. They don't want to bring up children in such an atmosphere. So people are starting to feel the pressure. Just think 52% think humanity is doomed. They look at the environmental mess, they look at the nuclear weapons, they look at the economic, political situation, and oh my God. Then they look at their leaders, it frightens them even more. So the point we're getting, one of the points we're getting from this chapter is how can you expect sanity when you're slaughtering 33 million cows a year? There'll seem to be a period of pleasantness and peace, and then all havoc erupts. And that's been the history. None of you remember World War II. I wasn't born during World War II. No battles were fought in the USA, but all the men were shipped overseas to meet their karma. 80 million people died. And that's just 80 years ago. It's all forgotten. World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. They formed the League of Nations after World War I. Never again. 20 years later, they're back with World War II. Now, one interesting point is that we may think peace means the absence of military violence. But that doesn't mean there's peace. There are all kinds of battles going on in people's bodies, their minds, their relationships. But we think, oh, there's been peace for 80 years. Forget it. There's been military violence in so many places in the world. And what to speak of social violence, relationship violence. So you can expect that thinking persons will start to question, is there another way to live? Anything else? Yeah.
I lived through before understanding movement started, people were pessimistic about a lot of things that were happening in society, but optimistic about the free love thing. So they moved together and formed these hippies. But now people seem to just be pessimistic and disconnected, and they have nothing to come together for. So I wonder, like the people who are asking questions about what better way there is, how do we reach them? And people that are so divided, and because of the new technology, they don't have to come together for really anything.
The worse it gets, the more service opportunity there is for us. That's how a servant of Lord Chaitanya looks at such situations. And there is Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda's mercy. That's why great saints and sages, the Bhagavatam says, worship Kali Yuga, because in this age you can easily go back to Krishna just by chanting Hare Krishna. So don't forget that part. Yes, back in the countercultural days in the USA, young people were critical of society, they were against society, but you say that they had something positive to, they had so-called free love and free drugs. But now everyone does that. Marijuana is legal. Free love, that's just everyday affair. More statistics. Did you know that for those over 30 years old, 33% of them say an open marriage is fine. For those under the age of 30 in the USA, 50% say an open marriage is fine. So they're they're already doing all those things. It's all legitimate now. Whereas back in the countercultural days, it was considered radical and exotic. Ooh, smoking marijuana, free gratificatory relationships. But now that's all considered normal. I was just I was checking the Australian news on a mainstream Australian news website, the number one mainstream. And there they had on the headline article on 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 the first page a couple, they were embracing each other. It looked like a wholesome, nice couple in their late 30s embracing and nothing risque, but just, and they were talking, oh, yes, we had an open marriage for 20 years and everything is just so wonderful. I've had many partners, he's had many partners, but still we're just together and it's all so nice. It's matter of fact. And then the journalist asked him, well, what about the children? And then they quoted one psychological expert, one psychologist. Children simply require physical needs and emotional support. As long as that's there, it doesn't matter what the marriage arrangement is. That's a psychology expert. That's the way it is. It's not going to work. But it's very difficult for people to see the correlation between wild weather, the threat of nuclear warfare, economic collapse, political instability. They can't see the correlation between their behavior and the bigger picture. They can't see it. So it's up to you to give them an education. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.